Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Connection with the Weekly Comic Book Roundup. Cover this week's X-Men and Avengers titles, at least those that aren't related to King in Black. So now it's time to move on to this week's King in Black tie-ins as well as miscellaneous Marvel titles. Kicking things off with Sword, number 4, which, yeah. Where we left off, the battle against Null was not going well for Earth. Null had covered the Earth in a symbiote goo shell, and had also taken over quite a few of the heroes, including Cable, who basically went after Krakoa for Null's second attack on the island. Some of the personnel at Sword had been sent down to help on the island, including Fabian Cortez, Frenzy, and Random, as well as Kree Skrull Alliance Ambassador Pybok the Power Skrull. However, Sword director Abigail Brand opted to put into place a contingency plan that she had, which would include part of which would be moving the Five off planet and repopulating elsewhere in the galaxy. Also, Manifold, not a teleporter, traveled throughout space looking for allies to help with battling against Null, and also discovered that the director of the Alpha Flight program, the current director of the Alpha Flight program, Henry Peter Gyrick, is working with Orchis. However, Manifold left before learning that Orchis has a mole within Sword. So the issue begins with Frenzy wrapped up in something, reflecting on what's going on, and basically, she can hear something, and she's trying to, she needs to latch on to. She needs something to latch on to get free. Nullified Cable is explaining what's going on, and he uses the symbiote goo to kill both Sunfire and Fabian Cortez, draining them of their life force, leaving them no more than skeletons. At the peak, WizKid has managed to fix communications, but there's no signal to be gotten. In the hatchery, the Five have overtaken Mentallo and his think tank, and Hope basically borrows Mentallo's telepathy to get in touch with Brand. She doesn't like Brand's plan at all. Then WizKid arrives, and it turns out that the think tank was not just designed for Mentallo, but also for WizKid, and in fact his chair can interface with it, and it becomes a mech, which he uses to combat the symbiote goo that's little by little infesting the island. Cable and Manifold have a bit of a teleportation-based game of cat and mouse, and they move closer and closer to where Frenzy's at, and eventually Frenzy gets out of the goo pod she's in and rips Cable's cybernetic arm off, basically making it so he can't teleport, and proceeds to beat the crap out of him. Manifold then explains that he's not a teleporter. he talks to the universe. And sometimes he asks the universe for things, like a piece of the sun. And she moved from there to here, wrapping a bubble full of space so it doesn't hurt anyone. At least anyone he doesn't want it to hurt. And so he uses that piece of the sun to free Cable. And it turns out Manifold's not an Omega level mutant. So there's actually someone who's even better at doing what Manifold does than Manifold. Meanwhile, back in the hatchery, which has been liberated from the Five, are having a little techno party with WizKid DJing and Mentalo just being a bit of a spoil sport about things. Magneto declares that Sunfire is to be moved to the front of the Resurrection Cube. Also mutants with proven anti-symbiote abilities: fire, electricity, light. Any who else who are injured are also who have died are also pretty high, are prioritized. Then comes Fabian Cortez, as Cortez and Magneto have matters to discuss. There's then a letter from Magneto to the Council of a meeting request at earliest convenience. Including some potential amendments to the second law. Not how it's the first law, but okay. Quorum of 8. Any binding resolutions be brought before the full council at such time as all 12 are in attendance. There will be 3 guests, however: Fabian Cortez and 2 others who are redacted. And as always, Krakoa will be listening. However, Xavier advises against this. Is advising against it. It feels like Magneto's playing with fire. And then there's a very redacted report simply stating Vought, Snark War, and Soul. Was it Vought, perhaps, that killed the the Snark War warlord? Maybe we'll find out. But that is where the issue ends. Join us for our next book, King in Black, Amazing Spider-Man. In part, so the issue begins with Peter Parker actually kind of having a panic attack because King in Black is kind of, sort of, all his fault. I mean, I'm sure Eddie Brock would fight with him over whose fault it is, but would fight with him over who takes the blame. But yeah, he's not entirely wrong. Basically saying that, it's his fault because he's the one who brought the symbiote to Earth in the first place. Which is actually a really good point. But in the distance, he sees something flying by and goes and attacks it, thinking it's the symbiote dragon. It's former Avengers Academy member Reptile, however, who is carrying who's trying to help get a woman to safety. So Spider-Man opts to help them, and Reptile also explains that Spidey's his inspiration. But he said one thing that Reptile learned from Hank Pym was that your capabilities. Symbiote possessed Celestials, there's nothing Reptile can do against them. But he can save people, which is what he's doing. So they get Ms. Volkov to Staten Island. They fight off a few of the symbiote dragons. There's a massive light on the ferry, but massive lights turn out to be beacons, and well, beacons attract all sorts. The And so Reptile decides, since most of the traditional dinosaurs won't do much good, maybe he can turn into one of the aquatic ones. So he does. And fights the symbiote that's attacking the ferry. Ms. Volkov, who was initially very much against Spider-Man, longtime Daily Bugle reader. She convinces the people on the ferry to let him help. If he's going to help, if he's offering to help, let him. So he makes an electrified harpoon and uses it against the symbiote dragon, and he fries that sucker. And him and Reptile save the day, and then Spidey says, "Okay, well, let's get back to let's get back into the city and get back to saving people, one at a time." We get a little backup story. Reptile texting his abuelo about about working with Spider-Man. And it's in parts of montages of helping people fighting out the symbiote dragons. Apparently, for situations like this, Spider-Man uses spider IOUs in bodegas and convenience stores for bottles of water that vanish. But yeah, that's where it ends. And that's the end of it. That's all our King in Black tie-in for this week. So now we've got our Outlawed tie-in. In fact, I think this is technically the conclusion of Outlawed, like a year later. But yeah. Champions, number 5. So where we left off, the Champions had decided that they were going to, they couldn't run. There was no more running, basically. They needed to, face the junior version of the SHRA. Also, Viv Vision needed to make amends for the fact that she was making it so that Cradle could track the champions. So the issue begins at a Cradle re-education center. Their nightly dose of propaganda is being given to the inmates as Brawn and Viv Vision break in, and they also turn off much of the security systems, namely when it comes to the ones that specifically affect the inmates. But yeah, everyone gets free. And yeah, they break out. The rest of the champions go to Chicago to Ironheart's home, and Ironheart's mom basically, says, "Hey, look, while I understand why some people think Commonwealth's law is necessary, I see y'all's strength, and yeah, hey, don't be afraid, act boldly. There are consequences to your actions." So they're about to make they start making an online broadcast when someone's banging on the door. It's Brawn and Viv and the rest of the champions. Viv explains what happened. She's at least... It does seem like the rest of them forgive her, and but Braun explains he downloaded a buttload of surveillance footage at the re-education center, and so it gets uploaded to the internet. And it turns out that the Roxxon Corporation was funding the re-education centers. Some Roxxon goons tell the senator that no, there's no interest. They have no. The repealing the law is not good for them, which means it probably wouldn't. And as they are a mega corporation, it's not going to be good for politicians. But They're also known to be a rather shady corporation, so it's at least being suspended for future consideration. But and it turns out that the Roxxon strike team that came with the Roxxon delegates to the senator's office were also at the Coles disaster from the beginning. But a statement is made, and they say that as long as people in need, and as long as they refuse to be afraid, there will always be champions. We get a preview or a kind of a header for the next arc. Miles and Sam Nova are undercover in Roxxon's social media division. And that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to our next book for the week, Iron Fist, Heart of the Dragon, number 3. Where we left off, the 7 cities of heaven were appearing on Earth, and their dragons were being hunted down by representatives of the 8th city, the Hidden City. And the door to the Hidden City was beginning to open. So, the legions of undead ninjas have been... Iron Fist and his allies have killed legions upon legions of undead ninjas and are piling their decapitated bodies in front of the door of the Hidden City. But Fat Cobra... Dog Brother and Faye stay at the Hidden City as they witness the arrival of the Hidden Dragon. As Iron Fist, Brighter Nine Spiders, and Luke Cage split up to go and help other heroes with the fight against undead ninjas in locations where the other cities emerged. Iron Fist goes to Tokyo and helps Radiance. And part of it is one thing is they have to talk down the local heroes from, going after the dragon. So, Radiance and Iron Fist team up against the ninjas in Rio de Janeiro. Luke Cage shows up to help Sunspot, who basically got called in to help out here from space, where he's practically running the show. And so, Cage and Sunspot team up against undead ninjas in Rio. Then in Wakanda, Okoye and the Wakandan Royal Guard go after more undead ninjas, and Brighter Nine Spiders arrives to say, "Hey, look, I'll take care of the ninjas. Just don't hurt the dragon." And then Mysterious Briar appears, proceeds to kill the dragon, and rip out its beating heart, leaving the bodies of some, and also kills a few of the royal guards before leaving. Okoye gives chase, but is found by none other than Prince of Orphans. But he says, "Hey, look, you can help, but chasing this guy down isn't the way you can help. Isn't the way." And the first thing she has to do is pass through the portal to the heart of heaven. So in Tokyo and Rio, Iron Fist and Radiance and Luke Cage and Sunspot have managed to stem things when Fu brings them both back to the hidden city, the Citadel, which has blood pouring from the top, and that is where the issue ends. Which brings us to our final Marvel book of the week, Marvel #6. Where we left off, it seemed Nightmare was about to win. He had imprisoned the Sorcerer Supreme, was going and had already made him watch as he defeated various cosmic entities. He's about to take over everything. So our first story, focusing on Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's called One-Eyed Gambit. Nick Fury has been informed by the President that Baron von Strucker has been granted a pardon because he'll be beneficial to the war on terror. But Fury, Dugan, and Contessa Valentino de Allegra I can't remember full. The Contessa decided they're going to look into an antimatter reactor that they stopped AIM from using. So Fury goes to gamble at alongside MODOK and wins the information. And so next he goes to a high-risk subaquatic science facility underneath in Lake Zurich, Switzerland. Dum Dum and the Contessa are hacking the computers in the facility while Fury deals with the goons and Arnim Zola. And now it looks like they got to go to the moon. And so Fury arrives, finds a lunar base with a giant laser cannon, and Dreadnought attacks him, damaging his spacesuit, namely the oxygen apparatus. Fury gets into the base with some oxygen, and there's someone there who recognizes him. At the White House, the president is on the phone with the senator when suddenly he's shot through the side of the head and revealed to be nothing more than a life model decoy. Life model decoy put in place by Baron Strucker, who was once again arrested. And as the story ends, Fury and the Contessa go on vacation. However, once again, a life model decoy is involved, and the Contessa takes out the LMD of herself. But as she chides Fury for falling for it, he explains that no, I knew she was an LMD. Her drink had a means of taking her out. Next up, we have the Silver Surfer in The Silver Glint of Space Reflections Gone. Basically, the Surfer's flying through the spaceway with leading Galactus, and he arrives on a world. And it seems familiar. He's been here before. But it's implied in this that Galactus wipes away. That I guess every time the Surfer returns to being the Herald, his memories get wiped away by Galactus. Turns out it's a devastated Earth. And as the Surfer flies through, he's attacked by the Human Torch. He's fighting to save his world, what's left of it. But Johnny flames on one last time and goes up against the Devourer and is promptly destroyed. Turns out that there was still some life on the planet that the Human Torch was protecting. And that is where the story ends. Now back to our framing story. Doctor Strange has managed to get his sash back to himself, and turns the tables on Nightmare. And with the help of all the heroes and villains and cosmic entities, Strange is able to defeat Nightmare and put things back the way they're supposed to be. And that is where the series ends. And that'll do it for this week's Marvel books. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying live long and rock hard.